Let's talk dryers, specifically double motor dryers. For years, the Canine 3 Double Dryer has been the gold standard of the professional grooming industry. But is it really worth the price? Today, I'm comparing it against three budget-friendly options: the Flying Pig Double Dryer, Shernbao Typhoon Double Dryer, and the Lan Tun, I think that's how you say it, Double Dryer. Let's find out if you really do need to drop $700 on a dryer, or if one of these budget-friendly options can do the trick. When it comes to professional dryers, specs matter, but real-world performance is what counts. So I'm testing based on power and airspeed, so CFM, cubic feet per minute, FPM, feet per minute, RPM, rotations per minute, and HP, horsepower. How strong is the airflow? Heat levels, does it stay at a safe, effective temperature? Noise level, so dB measured, that's decibels, because nobody wants to have a jet engine in their salon. That is scary for the dogs, and it's bad for your ears. Durability and build quality, will it last or will it burn out in a year? Price versus performance, are you getting your money's worth? So let's start with the big dog in the fight, and that is the Canine 3 Double Dryer. If you've worked in a busy salon, you know this beast. So here are its specs. Airflow is 245 CFM for each motor, that's to cubic feet per minute, 60,921 FPM, feet per minute, horsepower, 4 horsepower, and that's 2 horsepower in each motor, and it contains two 22,500 RPM motors. So heating, it has no heating element, but it does warm up from the motors, and it goes to 80 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit or 50 degrees Celsius. Noise level, it's about 90 decibels, and durability, it's heavy duty steel casing, so built to last. Price, it's about $600 to $700 depending on where you look. It is extremely powerful and blasts water out of even the thickest of coats. It's long lasting. These dryers can go for 5+ years with proper care. And as I mentioned, the motor does warm the air naturally, so there's no heating element that can break. It is faster than the Canine 2 due to better airflow. Now the downsides is it's kind of bulky, it's a little heavy, it weighs about 25 pounds, so it's, heavy to lift up and down, and it's expensive. It is an investment. So my final thoughts on this one is if you groom full time and you want a dryer that lasts years, this is definitely worth it. But what about the cheaper alternatives? The Flying Pig Double Dryer is often recommended as kind of a budget-friendly alternative to the Canine 3. You'll see that a lot online. So let's see how it holds up spec-wise. So airflow, you're looking at about 330 to 385 CFM and 62,000 FPM. Horsepower is 6 horsepower. RPMs are not specified, so nothing there. Heat, it's kind of the hottest blow dryer on the list, actually. It's around 81 to 165 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's about 27 to 71 degrees Celsius. For context, it has 3 settings, so none, low, and high. So on none, there will still be heat that gets generated by the motors. It doesn't have a rating for that one. On low, it is 81 Fahrenheit, and on high, it is up to 165 Fahrenheit. So as I mentioned, hottest one on the list. Noise level though, it's only 70 decibels, so really good. Durability, it has a good steel shell, but it does have lighter materials in other places. Price-wise, you're looking at about $180 to $300. Strong, powerful, dries coats efficiently as well. It is lighter than the Canine 3. It's 22.9 pounds. It's definitely more affordable. Not quite as durable, I would say, because it does have plastic components that kind of make it feel cheaper. So my final thoughts on that are, if you want solid performance at a lower price, this is definitely a great kind of middle ground choice. So the Shernbao Typhoon, another great budget-friendly choice, pretty comparable, I would say, to the Flying Pig. So let's take a look at the specs so we can kind of suss it out, see what I mean by that. So for airflow, you're looking at 320 CFM, 4,921 to 68,000 FPM. Horsepower, 6 horsepower, and RPMs also are not specified online. So heat does run warmer than the K9-3, around 90 to 125.6 Fahrenheit or 52 Celsius. So not quite as hot as the Flying Pig. Noise level, you're looking at about 85 decibels, so not bad. Durability, it's good, but the hoses do tend to feel a little flimsier. Price-wise, $150 to $330, and it is lighter than the first two, only 18.41 pounds. Lower price, obviously, than the K9-3. Good durability for the cost. Louder than the Flying Pig, but doesn't get as hot, so a couple differences there. So attachments and hose feel a bit cheap. I would say overall the construction of this one is not as good quality as the Flying Pig, so keep that in mind. Okay, let's talk super budget. The Lan Tun Double Dryer is the cheapest on the list, but is it even worth it? Let's talk about it. Specs. We've got airflow. So there was no CFM available online, but it is up to 22,370 FPM, so much lower. Horsepower is listed at 5 horsepower, and no RPMs are listed either. Heat, it does get hot, up to about 95 to 158 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 to 70 degrees Celsius. Just a bit under the Flying Pig, so pretty comparable. Noise level, 75 decibels. Durability, flimsy plastic, feels cheap. Price-wise, $110 to $200. It is weaker than the others, but the lightest weight, clocking in at 17.4 pounds. It gets hot, so this could be unsafe due to the plastic housing. It could overheat pretty easily, so keep that in mind. So yeah, as I mentioned, cheap materials probably won't last as long. Pretty likely it's going to burn out much quicker than the other ones. So on a tight budget, it does work, but if you're spending, I would opt for the Shernbao or the Flying Pig. It's just a way better investment in my opinion. So let's talk about some really important factors when we look at the specs. So firstly, there are differences in the horsepowers or the HP ratings. It basically comes down to how manufacturers measure and then advertise their motor power. So basically, here are a few key factors. So number one, peak HP and running HP. So some brands, like the Flying Pig, for example, may list their horsepower at what is called like the highest possible power output. So when it's running, the output that it produces in short bursts at the highest rating. So other brands, though, like the K9, may list a continuous running horsepower, which is more of a sustained power output during regular operation. So this is probably why it's listed at lower than the others. So if you're looking at the Flying Pig, it's advertising probably peak HP, but the K9-3 unit is probably using continuous HP. So this could explain the discrepancy between the two. So number two, motor and efficiency design. Even if the dryer does have a higher HP rating, it doesn't always mean that it is more powerful in real world use. So what I'm talking about here, the K9-3 uses 2 high quality motors designed for sustained high performance, airflow efficiency, durability. You get what I'm talking about here. The Flying Pig's dual motors may be rated at a higher HP, but could have differences in torque, RPM, and efficiency, and they don't list their RPM, so you have to keep that in mind. Number 3, airflow and performance differences. CFM, cubic feet per minute, and FPM, feet per minute, are often much better indicators of a dryer's actual performance than just looking at horsepower alone. So the K9-3 is known for strong airflow and high velocity, which means it can still outperform or match dryers with higher HP ratings in real-world grooming scenarios. So it's important to keep that in mind. So number 4 too is very important, electrical power limits. So many professional grooming dryers operate at similar power consumption levels. and that's important to keep in mind. It's about 14 to 20 amps on about a 110 volt circuit, meaning actual usable power output is often comparable despite different horsepower ratings. So even if one has more, it can't really output that performance. So the conclusion about all of this is that the horsepower rating alone doesn't determine the dryer being better. And you should actually look at airflow speed, efficiency, and durability because those matter much more. The K9-3 remains one of the most respected dryers in the grooming industry due to its high quality build and strong airflow, and it's very dependable. So despite it having a lower advertised horsepower than the other dryers, it doesn't really matter. And on this subject, I think it's important to talk about the K9 stats specifically. So I don't know if you were listening, I mentioned earlier that the CFM was for each motor. So the question is whether we should double that, and does that affect the FPM as well? So the K9-3 lists 245 CFM per motor. Since it has two motors, you might assume that it's basically a 490 CFM, but that's not necessarily how airflow works. CFM doesn't always double. And here's why. CFM is a measure of airflow volume, and adding a second motor doesn't always mean that you're going to get exactly double the airflow. The way motors interact within the dryer's housing and nozzle affects efficiency overall. Many dual motor dryers do increase CFM significantly, but the total is often slightly less than a perfect 2 times airflow resistance. Now, that said, CFM is likely close to 490 for the K9-3, but the actual output might be a bit lower due to system efficiency. Now let's talk about the FPM, and the K9-3 does list theirs as 60,921, and that measures the speed of airflow. Now FPM is usually measured at the nozzle exit, not per the motor. So does FPM double with 2 motors? Well, no. FPM should not double when you add a second motor. FPM depends on a couple factors, nozzle size and pressure, not just airflow volume. So adding another motor does increase airflow volume, CFM, but the speed, FPM, is limited by the nozzle design and air resistance that's coming out of it. So 60,921 FPM rating is likely for both motors running together, meaning this number is going to stay the same whether you're using one or both motors at a time. So here's the final answer. For the K9-3, the CFM is likely close to 490, but probably a little less than that due to airflow resistance. Now FPM does not double, it remains at the 60,921 FPM when both motors are on. So let's get into my picks here. Best overall, K9-3 overall, if your budget allows for it. Best budget pick though, the Flying Pig. Hands down, it's a great balance of price and power as well as durability. It does have that steel housing, but the runner-up budget option is the Shernbao Typhoon. It's got good airflow, and for the cost, it's pretty good, but the materials are cheaper. Now, I would skip out totally on the Lantun. Price-wise, it's the cheapest, but it's probably going to quit on you sooner than later. Just because of that heating element and the plastic housing, it's probably not going to work out. But if just one motor will do the trick, check out my review on the budget-friendly options that are available in this video right here.